The humiliation came in the scent of old paper and the monotonous voice of a lawyer. We were in my father's library, a week after his funeral. The air was heavy, not just with grief, but with the tension my brother, Richard, exuded from his expensive suit. I, with my hands still stained with soil from the Napa vineyards I had just come from, felt like a fish out of water in my own home. For 20 years, the Sterling Vineyards had been my life. While Richard went to New York to build a career in finance, I stayed. I stayed to learn every secret of the vines from my father, to smell the fermentation, to create the wines that won us awards and a reputation for excellence. I wasn't just the winemaker, I was the heir to the legacy, the soul of that place. Or so I thought. The lawyer cleared his throat and read the crucial part of my father's will. To my son Richard, for whom I have always wished material success, I leave the entirety of the land's ownership, including all acres of vineyards that comprise the Sterling estate. A shocked silence filled the room. I felt the air leave my lungs. The land, it was everything. The lawyer continued, almost as a footnote. To my daughter Eleanor, my son, who inherited my passion, I leave the Sterling Vineyards brand, its operations, the machinery, the barrel stock, and the bottled inventory. Richard couldn't contain a triumphant smirk. He turned to me, his eyes gleaming with poorly disguised greed. "Well, little sister," he said, his tone dripping with condescension, "looks like Dad was fair after all. I get the real estate, the actual multi-million-dollar asset. You get the hobby, a name, some old grapes, and a bunch of wood. Don't worry, I won't leave you high and dry. Maybe I can hire you to supervise the demolition." Those words were a punch to the gut. In front of the lawyers in our father's library, he reduced me to nothing. He saw me not as the soul of the vineyard, but as a disposable accessory. "What do you mean, demolition?" I asked, my voice a thin thread. "Oh, didn't I tell you?" he said, savoring every word. "I already have an offer, a hotel consortium. They're going to build the biggest luxury resort in Napa Valley right here. They'll rip out these old vines and build a golf course. It's the future, Eleanor. Something you, with your dirt-stained hands, would never understand." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. A coldness washed over me. I looked at my father's portrait above the fireplace, at his eyes that always seemed to hold a secret, a glint of cunning. He couldn't have done this. Not like this. There was something I wasn't seeing. And in that moment, amid the pain and humiliation, I promised myself I would find out what it was. Richard thought he had inherited the land, but I suspected my father, in his wisdom, had left me the weapon. The following weeks were purgatory. Richard acted like the new king of the valley. He brought surveyors, architects, and executives from the hotel consortium to tour the property, ignoring my presence as if I were part of the landscape. He gave me a 60-day notice to remove my things, the barrels, the bottles, the machinery, my life, before the bulldozers arrived. Every night, after a somber day of work trying to maintain production with a desolate team, I would lock myself in my father's library. I wasn't looking through a loophole in the will. I was looking for him, for his logic, for a clue to his real plan. He was a shrewd man, a chess player who thought 10 moves ahead. He wouldn't have left me defenseless. I searched through drawers, read old journals, analyzed the vineyard's accounting books. Nothing. Frustration was beginning to give way to despair. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he had simply favored his son, the son of financial success. It was in the dead of night, exhausted and on the verge of giving up, that I found a dusty, old leather-bound folder at the bottom of a filing cabinet. The label read, AVA, Sterling Estate, American Viticultural Area. I opened it. Inside was the entire, dense application for the official AVA designation my father had secured years ago. This seal guaranteed the unique quality and origin of our wines, elevating their market value immensely. It was a technical, dry document, full of legal jargon. I started reading, not with hope, but with a sense of final duty. And then I saw it. Tucked away among dozens of clauses about grape varietals and production methods, there was an addendum, handwritten by my father and notarized. Clause 7.A, territorial binding of the brand. My heart hammered against my ribs. The clause stipulated, in clear, irrefutable language, that the Sterling Vineyards brand and its prestigious AVA seal were intrinsically and permanently linked to the exact geographical coordinates of the Sterling estate. The text read, "The brand may only be legally used on labels of wine whose grapes are grown, harvested, and vinified within the boundaries of this property. Should the land be used for any other purpose other than viticulture, or should the vines be removed, the brand and the AVA seal immediately and irrevocably lose all legal validity and commercial value." I read it again, and a third time. A slow, disbelieving laugh escaped my lips, echoing in the silent library. It was brilliant. It was poetic. It was my father's checkmate from the grave. Richard hadn't inherited a multi-million-dollar piece of real estate. He had inherited a plot of soil that only held that exorbitant value because of the brand he didn't own. Without my brand, without my operation, his land was just land. A beautiful piece of Napa Valley, yes, but worth a fraction of what the hotel consortium was paying. He had given my brother the body, the physical asset, but he had given me the name, the soul, the reputation, and he had tied the value of the body to the soul. He hadn't disinherited me. He had given me the key to the vault. He had given me the weapon, loaded and ready, and Richard, in his blind greed, was about to point it at his own head and pull the trigger. A father's wisdom set the perfect trap. If you, like me, can't wait to see greed defeated by intelligence, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. The final toast in this story will be unforgettable. The next day was the first in weeks that the sun seemed brighter. The grief was still there, but the paralysis of humiliation had vanished, replaced by a cold, strategic clarity. My first move was not to confront Richard. That would be a mistake. I needed him to continue down his arrogant path to the very end. Instead, I made 2 calls. The first was to a friend of my father's, one of the top agricultural law and AVA specialists in the country. I explained the situation. On the other end of the line, I heard a deep chuckle. "Eleanor, your father was a genius, a poet even, in his contracts. This is ironclad. He gave you the kingdom and left your brother with a gilded cage." I asked him to prepare a full legal opinion on the value of the land without the brand and the AVA certification. The second call was to the most respected real estate appraiser in the region. I hired him for an independent appraisal of the property, but with a specific condition: to assess the land's value from the perspective of common agricultural use, disregarding the Sterling Vineyards brand. Meanwhile, Richard's circus continued. He set the date for the contract signing with the hotel consortium. It was to be a grand event at the vineyard itself. He wanted the final humiliation, to sign the death certificate of our father's legacy right in front of me. Little did he know he was just setting the stage for his own ruin. The first sign that something was amiss for him came subtly. One of the consortium's lawyers, a meticulous man, sent an email requesting copies of all the property's certifications, including the American Viticultural Area designation. Richard, who had never bothered with such bureaucratic details, came to me impatiently. "Eleanor, the resort's lawyers are asking for some old certification papers. Where do you keep that stuff?" With a serene smile, I handed him a simple copy of the folder, without the crucial addendum of Clause 7A. "It's all in there, Richard. Good luck with the paperwork." He barely glanced at it. He just took the documents and forwarded them to his assistant. He was so close to the money, he couldn't see the details.
He didn't see the trap closing around him. His arrogance was his blindfold, and I was just watching him walk, confidently, towards the cliff's edge. The chaos, for Richard, didn't start with a shout, but with a silence. A strange silence on the other end of the line. 2 days before the signing, I received a call from an unknown number in San Francisco. It was one of the junior lawyers from the hotel consortium. His voice was cautious. "Miss Sterling, with all due respect, we're doing our final due diligence, and there's a small inconsistency we can't clarify with your brother. The AVA certification mentions an addendum, 7.A, which wasn't included in the documents we received. Would you happen to have a copy?" My heart leapt. The bait had been taken. "Of course," I replied, in the most innocent voice I could muster. "It's an addendum about the binding of the brand to the land. I can send it over to your email, if you'd like." "I would greatly appreciate that," he said, relieved. I sent the document and waited. What followed was 24 hours of radio silence. No emails, no calls, nothing. I knew that in some high-rise office in San Francisco, a team of lawyers was now poring over that clause, understanding the magnitude of the problem. The night before the big signing, my phone rang. It was Richard. His voice was no longer arrogant. There was a note of something I had never heard in him before. Uncertainty. "Eleanor, what's this territorial binding of the brand nonsense? The consortium's lawyer called me asking some weird questions. Said you sent him a paper." "He asked me for a complete copy of the certification, Richard. I just sent it." "That doesn't mean anything, right? It's just some formality from Dad, one of his sentimental things. It has no legal standing, does it?" The question was almost a plea. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "I'm not a lawyer, Richard, but from what I understand, it means the Sterling Vineyards brand can only be used on wines made from the grapes of this land. If the vines are ripped out, the brand evaporates." I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. He was starting to get it. The gilded cage was closing. "That's ridiculous! I own the land. I can do whatever I want with it," he exploded, his arrogance returning as a defense mechanism. "Of course you do," I agreed, with a sweet, venomous tone. "You can plant soybeans, raise cattle, or build a golf course. You just can't call it Sterling Vineyards. And the brand, as you know, was left to me." I hung up before he could respond. I had left him with the seed of panic. He would spend a sleepless night trying to convince himself it was a bluff, that his multi-million-dollar prize was still within reach. But doubt, once planted in the mind of a greedy man, is a weed that grows fast. The signing day is approaching, and the greedy brother's panic is almost palpable. Stories of women using intelligence to turn the tables are the soul of our channel. If you admire that strength, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the final toast. The signing event was set up on the main patio of the vineyard. Tables with white linens, waiters serving our best sparkling wines, and a wooden stage set up for the speeches. Richard, despite our conversation the night before, seemed to have regained his composure. He wore an impeccable suit and mingled with the consortium executives with a forced smile. He was clinging to the hope that I was wrong, that his lawyers would find a loophole. I wasn't invited, but I was there, officially to oversee the wine service, since the brand and its operations were still mine. In reality, I was the guest of honor at the implosion that was about to unfold.
Richard took the stage, raising a glass. "Friends, partners, visionaries," he began, his voice a little too loud. "Today, we celebrate not the end of an era, but the beginning of a new one.
A future of progress, of luxury that will transform this valley forever. A toast to the future! The executives applauded, raising their glasses. The lead counsel for the consortium, a gray-haired man with a serious expression, remained seated, motionless. As Richard came down from the stage to sit at the signing table, I gave a discreet signal. My two special guests, the agricultural law expert and the real estate appraiser, approached the main table. "Gentlemen, excuse me," said my friend, the lawyer, with cutting politeness. "Before the pens touch the paper, my clients would like to present a small addendum to our understanding of this asset's value." Richard looked at me, his eyes shooting daggers. "What is the meaning of this, Eleanor?" I stepped forward, holding two folders. I handed one to the consortium's lawyer and the other to Richard. "This, little brother," I said, using the same condescending word he had used on me, "is what you called old paperwork. It's a legal opinion on Clause 7A of the American Viticultural Area designation." The consortium's lawyer opened the folder and began to read. His face, already serious, became a stone mask. My lawyer friend continued, "As you can see, the brand Sterling Vineyards, which is the property of my client, Eleanor, is permanently tied to the viticultural use of this land. If the vines are removed, the brand, the AVA seal, and all its commercial value are legally nullified. What you gentlemen are purchasing is not Sterling Vineyards, but simply the Sterling estate." The appraiser then handed over his report. "And the market value of this property, as common agricultural land, without the brand and the premium production license, is this." The consortium's lawyer looked at the number. Then he looked at Richard with icy contempt. "Mr. Sterling, the value you presented to us for this transaction appears to have been inflated by about 80%. The silence that followed was absolute. The executives lowered their glasses. Richard's smile dissolved, replaced with a deathly pallor. He looked at the contract, then at me, and I saw the exact moment reality hit him like a freight train. The consortium's lawyer stood up. "I believe this signing is postponed indefinitely. We need to reevaluate the terms, or more likely, the viability of the entire project." They stood up and left, without a handshake, without a word of goodbye. They left Richard standing alone next to a table with a useless contract and a half-empty glass of champagne. He looked at me, his hatred now mixed with panic and humiliation. He said, "This was Dad's trick, wasn't it?" "It wasn't a trick, Richard," I replied, taking a glass from a waiter's tray. "It was a character test. And you, unfortunately, failed." I raised my glass in a silent toast to my father's portrait, visible through the library window. The revenge was complete. The fiasco at the signing became the talk of the valley. The wine king, as he liked to call himself, became a laughingstock. The hotel consortium not only canceled the project, but also leaked to the business press that he had tried to sell an asset with a grossly inflated value, destroying the reputation as a sharp negotiator that he had spent years building in the financial market. He was trapped with acres of land that, without my brand, weren't worth the inheritance tax he needed to pay. Trapped with a staff that now openly despised him. In the following weeks, he tried to find other buyers, but the news of Clause 7A had already spread. No one wanted to pay millions of euros for land with such a specific restriction, and a brand owner who was so uncooperative. He came to me one night, no longer with the arrogance of a conqueror, but with the desperation of a cornered man. "What do you want, Eleanor? Money? Half the value? Is that it?" I watched him, there in the tasting room, surrounded by the work of my life, of our father's life, and I didn't feel hatred. I felt a deep sadness for his short-sightedness, for his inability to see value in anything that couldn't be converted into figures. I don't want your money, Richard. I want the vineyard. I want Dad's legacy, the only thing that ever mattered to me. But the land is mine, he snarled, a final flash of his old self. Yes, it is, I agreed, and you're free to do whatever you want with it. Plant potatoes, raise ostriches, but if you want this land to once again produce the award-winning Sterling Vineyards wines, you need me. You need my brand, my operation, my team, and my knowledge. You have the dirt, Richard. I have everything else. He fell silent, the hard truth finally penetrating his armor of pride. He didn't own anything. He was just the caretaker of a field that only flourished under my supervision. Our father's will wasn't a division of assets. It was a sentence. He had given each of us exactly what we deserved, and at the same time, what we most needed to learn. The negotiation that followed wasn't a negotiation. It was a surrender. Richard, drowning in debt and with his reputation in tatters, had no other choice. He wanted me to buy his land. I'm not going to buy what is already mine by right of soul, Richard, I told him, in the same library where our father gave us this final lesson, but I will offer you a way out. My proposal was simple. I wouldn't buy the land. Instead, I would lease it from him for a symbolic amount, a value that would barely cover his taxes. In return, I would give him a minimal, almost insignificant percentage of the profits from the wine sales, enough for him not to go bankrupt, but not enough for him to feel victorious. He would be a silent partner, a ghost in his own inheritance, receiving the crumbs of the legacy he tried to destroy. He hated it. He protested. But in the end, he signed. With full control, my first action was to rehire the staff who had quit, not as employees, but with a share in the profits. I turned Sterling Vineyards into a talent cooperative where everyone who put their hands in the soil and on the grapes had a piece of the success. The first vintage under my total management was named the Patriarch's Legacy. On the back label, for the first time, in addition to my name as head winemaker, I listed the name of every vineyard worker, from the pruner to the harvester. The wine didn't just win every national and international award, it told a story. The story that the land has no owner, it has guardians. Today, Sterling Vineyards is more prosperous than ever. Richard lives in New York. He receives his small dividend every year and has never set foot here again. Sometimes I hear he tells others that he's an investment partner in an award-winning winery in Napa. I let him have his little fiction. My revenge wasn't watching him humiliated on the day of the signing. It was every bottle we open, every award we win, every worker who smiles at the end of a bountiful harvest. It was proving my father right. He didn't divide an inheritance. He gave us a choice. Richard chose the money and lost it. I chose the passion, the land, the legacy. And in the end, I got everything. The most flavorful revenge I discovered is one that you can drink, age, and share. Eleanor's story shows us that the sweetest revenge is the one that honors a legacy. If you were inspired by her intelligence, please leave a like so YouTube can share this story with more people. And of course, if you're not yet part of our community, subscribe now so you don't miss any stories. It's amazing how narratives like this can connect people from all over. So we can get an idea of how far our stories are reaching. Please comment below what city, state, or country you're watching from right now. We would love to see our community on the map. Take care, and until the next story.